Dave Stagl here from Going to 11, and today I want to demonstrate a little bit of parallel compression on drums for live mixing. This is kind of the way I implement it, so I want to show you how it adds to the sound of drums in a lot of my mixes. I'm doing this in Pro Tools, but the setup is identical to how I would handle things in a live setting on a console. So basically, I have two groups here. I have my kit group, which has all the drums going to it, and then I have my kit spank group, which is all of the drums minus anything metal. So no overheads, no hat, no ride, none of that kind of stuff. And then those two buses go to my mix bus, which today I have a little bit of bus compression going on. I'm using this CLA mixdown plugin, which, by the way, if you've never done anything with mix bus compression, this is a great kind of easy way to experiment with it and mess around. Normally live, I usually use the Waves API 2500, but I had this today and I figured I'd play around with it. I turn off the EQ on it because I'm not as crazy about what they do, but I have the compression on, which is this glue control here, and then the drive control is on, and that's kind of emulating a console mix bus saturation. So basically, but you can look at it, it's just all flat. This is the startup setting on it, basically minus the EQ. After that, I have a Pultec on my master bus. I normally don't do this live, but I had this running when I was mixing because in the studio I have this on my mix bus normally, and since I was mixing through it, I just left it on because it's doing some stuff. So just ignore that or not. But anyways, so let's listen to the drums. I'm not going to go into how the drums were mixed, but this is basically similar to how I would handle things live. So here's the drums just on their own. So the overheads are a little bit loud because it's going to balance out when I put the kit spank on. But there's the drums on their own, and now let me bring in this. So to me, gives it more impact, which is really what I'm going for when I'm adding this. Let me take that out again. So that's without. More impact, more snap, just more punch overall. The drums feel more aggressive to me with it. And that's really what I like to get out of that parallel compression. So this is a little deceiving though because we're getting a boost in volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute the overheads. And right next to this, I have kind of a rough loudness matched version of the kit. So if we turn off those and just have the clean, and I'll just toggle between them so that you can kind of hear it a little more closely matched. So there's just clean. So to me, the parallel compressed version, again, has a little more of that kind of aggressive punch that I want out of the drums. Another thing that you can notice is if you just listen to the ghost notes on the two version, a lot of that detail is coming up. So here's a clean. Just listen to the ghost notes. So we're getting more of that low-level detail with the parallel compression in. So there's the two. So how am I doing this? There's a lot of different ways you can approach this. The kind of textbook parallel compression is to use a fast attack compressor and then kind of a medium-ish, medium-long-ish release on it, doing lots and lots of compression. But I don't usually have a lot of luck with that. Today, I'm just using this Waves DBX 160. Let's see how much work is it doing. So it's doing 5 to 10-ish dB gain reduction on there. And I like this compressor because it's simple. I don't have to mess around with attack and release. And when I'm mixing live, the faster I can get somewhere, the easier it is for me. But I also have some different compressors here if you want to hear the difference. So this is H-comp, which is what I use quite a bit when I'm mixing live. So I'll toggle back and forth between H-comp and the 160. So there's H-comp. There's the 160. So they're a little different character. But they're also kind of similar because I'm trying to get the same kind of feel out of things. Another popular compressor is an 1176 style compressor. I've just got the CLA 76. Here's what that sounds like. So again, CLA 76, DBX. And just for kicks, H-comp one last time. So personally, I prefer the H-comp and the 160. I've used H-comp for parallel compression on drums for a lot of years. The 160 is a little newer for me, but either of those, I like them. But you can mess around with compressors you have and play around. I've done this with the onboard console compressor on a group before. It's more, to me, it's more about having an idea of what you want that kind of smack to do than necessarily getting hung up in a particular compressor. So let's just listen to this smash on its own so you can hear kind of what that sounds like. I'll turn it up. So this is before the compression. This is just the dry going in there. And let me do something real quick. There we go. All right, now I can toggle these easier. All right, so there's the 160. I'll go to the H-comp. So now you can hear how different that is. It's a little easier, I think. The 160 to me has a little more front end transient. And that's kind of one of the things that the 160s are known for. They add a knock to drums when you hit them, which is one of the things I kind of like. So there's H-comp again. Here, let's go to the CLA 76. I kind of like that too. And just for comparison, here's clean. So there's without, kind of boring. All right, so let's go back to the 160. Now, you'll notice there's some other stuff I have in the chain here. So I'm just going to turn everything off and go one step at a time. So first up, I'm doing some saturation with NLS bus. I have this on the mic setting because the harmonics that the mic console generates are similar to what tape saturation does. And I kind of like that on drums. So here's without. There's with. Kind of subtle. All right, and then next up, we'll add the compression. So the compressor's doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. Let me toggle that NLS bus now. So now that's bypassed. Now you can kind of hear it exaggerated a little more. All right, now this is the final ingredient, a Pultec on it. One of the kind of keys to parallel compression on drums, at least, that a lot of people don't do and don't understand is typically you EQ after the compression. So, and this is probably going to turn things up, unfortunately, but this is with it bypassed. So that's a big difference right there. Let me see if I can loudness match this. So that's without the EQ. So that adds a lot to the overall mix of things. So let's put this back in, and I'll just go through some of this stuff so you can hear it going on and off. So now we've got the whole drum kit going. The overheads are still muted. So this is just the drum inputs. So if I bypass this EQ now, still more, the compressor still does a bunch, but it's really when that goes in. Let's add the overheads back in. So there you have it. Here, let me put in, I'll send the overheads to this whole thing just to kind of see what happens. I'll adjust the level. But this is what happens when you put the overheads into the compression. So listen to the crashes. There's just something about the crashes when it goes in that I'm just not a big fan of. So let's get this back again. All right. One of the things that often gets people in trouble with parallel compression is something called latency. Basically, whenever we're processing something digitally, especially when we start adding plugins, we add latency. So Pro Tools has delay compensation on, but right down here we can see exactly what we're doing. So right here, the delay on this group is 0. And then here we can see that we're adding 302 samples from this chain. And if I turn some of these off, we'll get it down to 238 samples. A lot of times I've walked in on guys and they don't have any kind of delay compensation going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solo up the snare drum, and I'm going to turn delay compensation off so you can hear what that does. So here's the compensation, and then I'm going to bypass it. Right there is a phase problem. But one of the things about it, sometimes, now right here we're dealing with 238 samples. Let's just listen, what does one sample do? So I'm just going to add a single sample to the kits bank. This is without it. So one's not making a big difference, but it definitely changes. But there's two samples. So that's what it's supposed to be. There's two. Let's go to 10. So you can hear how that comb filtering is doing different things, especially with all that hi-hat bleed in there. Remember, here's the original. But it's also affecting the attack of our drum. So that's 20 samples. Let's go to 30. So you can just hear every time that shifts, it changes. And I don't want it to shift. I want the same path, the same amount of delay on each group so that they're phase aligned when they hit the mix bus. All right. Now, a lot of the newer plugins that are coming out add in a wet-dry control. So I kind of tried to emulate that a little bit here. And this is controversial. Some engineers really don't like the use of a wet-dry control. But let's listen to it and see if we can kind of get the same thing. So I've got the same compression, and all I've done is I've gone into the wet-dry, and I've kind of approximated the ratio, because whenever we're doing this with two faders, there's always a ratio of our clean to our compressed. And we can express a ratio as a percentage. So I've kind of ballparked this. I've got it at about 37.5% wet. So let's do, here's just with the wet dry. And the other thing I did, I put this pull tech on the end. It's not going to be quite the same as when we're doing it in parallel. So I'm doing less with the pull tech as compared to, I mean, you can see that boost is up around 8 on the wet dry version, closer to 4.5, 5-ish or so. So I kind of toned that down, but I just wanted to kind of approximate what this will do. So let's go to, here's what we had. So let's go to the wet dry. Pretty close. Now let's put the overheads in, because one of the differences is we're going to have the overheads going into this wet dry, or actually I didn't. I routed them here. So those are clean, and then versus that. So everything is going to this wet dry version except for the overheads, and then the overheads are here just clean going to the mix bus, and I just matched the level about approximately. So I'll toggle between them again. So this is the wet dry version. Whoops. Oops. So they're definitely a little different, but to me, I think the wet dry version is actually it's plausible and usable. I can get kind of the same thing. One of the advantages of having it on two groups is you can change up that balance on a song per song basis a lot easier than if you're just doing it with the wet dry on there. But sometimes just doing wet dry, it's just an easier approach than having to do the two groups. You don't have to worry about latency. You can just put a plug in and do that. So anyways, I hope this gives you some ideas of ways of implementing parallel compression on your drums. If you've got questions, feel free to throw them up on my website over at goingto11.com. Thanks.